Well, hi everybody. I wanted to do this extra video because I had had some thoughts. It's Friday night and it's the Sabbath has begun, and Saturday tomorrow I'll be celebrating Shabbat, and I won't have time to get back to do another video at least for a while. And there'd been some lingering thoughts. Some miscellaneous thoughts that I think I should put in just so that they're not on my mind. I had been talking about music, the idea that I can compose maybe an album, maybe put together 10 songs, and maybe make some kind of side hustle, perhaps, out of that. I wanted to mention some things that I had learned about music composition. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I hope I'm not grossing anybody out with that. It's from shaving. Sometimes it's a nick. I had wanted to tell you about what I had learned. I already told you in terms of stanzas. See, I'm used to writing poems, and I was used to writing them in stanza structure, but I noticed that in music, especially 1980s music, well, I don't want to say especially, but, well, I have in mind writing writing to the style of 1980s music, just in general. I guess pop songs. There are different varieties of music in the 1980s. I don't mean rap, I mean like Genesis or Billy Joel or Elton John, something like that. I noticed that a lot of them don't construct in stanzas, they construct in couplets, what I call couplets, meaning it's basically two phrases and the final two words, the final word in each line of the two rhymes with the other one. And I've been writing stanzas which are sometimes too long. Well, we'll see what happens. I'm confident that I can maybe compose a list of 10 different topics, 10 songs. I had done that a few times. That's why I posted earlier videos that have like poem 1, poem number 2, poem number 3. I want to actually get it, maybe an album out of it. Let me see. Oh, so I picked up that on that. I picked up that there are 4 common chords. There are 4 chords that are common in a lot of music. So I want to learn those 4 chords. I know what they are. I won't tell them right now just because I want to move on with the video and I want to learn them better. I also wanted to, going away from song composition for a bit, I also wanted to mention that there are some topics I've covered in earlier videos, but because I've privatized the early ones, I think I should mention them again. There's a list of perhaps 10 being a common number. There's a list of very eye-opening fields of research, perhaps books or something like that, that I'd like to share in a video. It's essentially a reading list, a recommended reading list. One of them was this idea. It's not a book, but it's, let me see, it's called the Internal Family Systems Model, and it's something by Dr. Schwartz, Dr. Richard Schwartz. He had been a therapist dealing with family problems and family systems and how members in a family relate to each other and the dynamics involved in that. And so he had started seeing some patients, meeting with them outside of their family or outside of a family structure. And he noticed that when they would speak, they would talk in terms of parts of their own mind as if the parts themselves were different family members. I don't mean their own family members, I mean typical family member dynamics. So he developed this idea that within each of us, our minds have different parts and they relate to each other in predictable ways akin to the way family members take on certain roles when they relate to each other and interact. So, thus, he came up with the internal family systems model. Uh, the self, the sense of self, has like 8 different traits, all beginning with C's, because of course after a while, a few of them started uh, beginning with C, and it's easy to remember if they all start with C. It's confidence, courage, curiosity, creativity, and so forth. And before I learned about this, I instinctively had that sense. If you're very confident, you're sure of yourself, you're, at least I would be very creative when I was also very curious and confident in my abilities. I think there really is something to that. So over time, we experience these traumas. They may be large traumas, they may be small traumas, and then other parts. So that these are like parts of our minds, and then there are other parts that are firefighters that quickly try and put out the flames of these memories. Like, in other words, imagine a small part of your mind that's holding on to this traumatic memory. There's another part that acts as a firefighter to quickly put out, and I do mean quickly. I don't mean long term. I mean quickly. Um, um, Induce the rest of you to do some behavior that mitigates or helps to try and deal with this one part that has a traumatic memory. It could be alcohol abuse, it could be addictive behavior, could be some kind of thing that simply tries to mitigate or distract from this part that holds on to this traumatic memory. And I've been trying to get over something with somebody, and I've been having some success, due in large part to um, talking with some people and learning more about the context of what had happened. This happened quite a while back, and some instinct within me wanted to put it to rest, and I felt as if I couldn't put it to rest until I understood the situation from different perspectives, like what was actually going on. Something that hurt me very, very much was not was being in the dark, being confused, not understanding what was going on. And I think we all, I imagine we all go through something like that. We would heal a lot faster if we understood what was really going on. Um, so I've been spending some time healing, and it's really nice to be able to do that. So there are those small parts carrying trauma. There are these firefighters. There's the self, and then there's, I can't remember what the term is, like moderator or something. There's a larger part of the mind that is responsible for long-term coordination of these different parts. So that's internal family systems, and I think there's a lot of merit to it. Instinctively, I feel this seems to make sense. Um, and then there are other topics, there are other recommended avenues of research I'd like to explain further. There's the generational archetype model by Strauss, and I can't remember who the other person was. Look up the book The Fourth Turning. I believe another book is The 13th Generation, and I'm pretty sure there's at least a third book out there by these two authors. Um, one of whom is dead. But anyway, the four archetypes are prophet, nomad, hero, artist, and then it repeats the cycle: prophet, nomad, hero, artist. And these are the generations in order. Um, and when a child is all right, say a child is of a certain generation, like a nomad generation. His father would have been of the a prophet generation, and when they reach adulthood, they exert influence on society, so that the society goes in a certain direction, has certain values, and so because there are four generations, you find there are four phases in history, and then the that and then time repeats itself. Um, so you have four phases in a certain period of time. We'll call it an epoch, an epic, um, and in each one of those phases, you have four different generations experiencing it simultaneously, but having their own individual experiences. So, like for example, I was born in the end of 1975, so I'm part of the Generation X, and the 1980s for my generation was a period of childhood, perhaps adolescence. I mean, I was born towards the late part of the Generation X, and so in my childhood, the 1980s were were fanciful, a lot of movies, a lot of fun, school, and playing with toys and so forth, and shopping malls and so forth. But somebody from an earlier generation during that same time, of course, remembers the 1980s in a very different way. They remember being employed, they remember adulthood, and so forth. And then, of course, an earlier generation was an elder during the 1980s. So you have four different cycles, and at each cycle you have, or phase, each different phase, you have four different generations experiencing that phase from different perspectives. And so as the phases progress, as these four generations progress between, from one phase to another, they shift in terms of their own phase in life. So the prophet generation at a certain phase then becomes the nomad generation in the next phase, and then becomes the, oh, wait a minute, do I have that right? No, sorry, I got that backwards. No. The prophet generation may begin in childhood, like, for example, in the 1950s, and then as they grow older into the 70s, they shift into the next phase of this epic as they reach, like, young adulthood, and then midlife, and then elderhood as time progresses. And it's about adulthood when their influence on society becomes noticeable, and so that characterizes that phase of the four. And so it's interesting. So the four phases are like, at some point, the individual is deemed strong, and um, the government and institutions are weak, and then it slowly progresses to a point like Pearl Harbor or like 9/11, where the society is attacked from outside. Nobody's really paying attention to warning signs, and then we go into war, and then that's about the point when the um, the uh, the hero generation is reaching young adulthood, and then they have to fight in the war. And meanwhile, the elders at a different phase of life during that same time period, um, and then they have to, after the war, they have to build society and institutions back up, and then at some point, society is strong and the individual is merely part of society, and and then society becomes too institutionalized, and there's pressure to break away, to crack these cemented institutions that have become too powerful. So there's a cycle going up and down, up and down, up and down. Society is strong, individual is weak, and then it breaks down until um, individual is strong and society is weak. It goes up and down. It's a fascinating model. There's another model called Dramatica, which deals with storytelling and how film and television stories in general are merely the mind working through a problem from four different perspectives. Um, and I'll mention this in a future video. I also have talked about the influence of cults, the danger of cults, in a very early video I had, and a few videos early on that I've since privatized. I talked at one point about my interest in UFOs and the supernatural, particularly UFOs, because I think there is potential for cults in ufology. Not to say that ufology itself is a cult, but sort of magical thinking, and I questioned my own self. Was I going along with magical thinking, and in what ways when I was reading about UFOs, and so forth and so on. I think the cult mindset is one of the most dangerous things in society. Really, I mean, there's national debt. There are all these different political threats and so forth. But I think cults, the cult mindset is one of the biggest. I don't know how many people realize that. Let me see. I'll go in a future video and talk about that. Um, I just had these miscellaneous thoughts I wanted to add, and I wanted to wish you all a good weekend, especially my Jewish friends, and I guess everyone else have a good weekend. But of course, for my Jewish friends, Shabbat Shalom, meaning not only happy Sabbath, but Shalom relates to balance and wholeness, and so I mean, it's the same root word. So I wanted to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. Have a whole a wholeness in your Sabbath. Um, Let me see what else. I'm also open to any suggestions in terms of how I can improve my channel. I know I should put up more decoration on the walls. That takes money. Um, I used to have an opening theme. It was very short. I just quit um, quit putting it in. I would have an episode number something or other with a title. After a while, I quit doing that simply because it was easier just to produce the video. But I want these videos to look better and be more presentable. I'm trying to build up my channel. I don't have that many subscribers yet. I don't have that many views yet. So I want to change that. I want to change that. So I'll be thinking of what other ways I can improve the channel and what other videos I can have lined up. So again, I hope you have a good weekend, and I'll see you next time. Bye.